passing it over to our state coordinator, Burke Murphy, who's going to give you kind of a little bit of info about MNWiC and what we do. So I'm going to pass it to her and take it away, Burke. I'll spotlight you.
Thank you, Maddie. Hi, everybody. Welcome. It is a beautiful spring day, and I'm delighted you're all here. I'm going to share my screen and introduce you to MNWiC with about 10 slides. Can you see them, Maddie?
Yes.
Full screen.
Yep.
Okay, let's go to full screen. What do you see now?
I see your presentation view.
Okay, and we don't want to do that.
I think under display settings, it might give you the option to pick. There you go.
Swap.
Yep.
Okay, thank
Perfect.
you. Okay, we're good. So, welcome everyone. We are Minnesota Women in Conservation, and we are sponsored by Renewing the Countryside, a nonprofit that's been serving and supporting and connecting land stewards and farms with the necessary resources for over 20 years in Minnesota and the upper Midwest. Thank you to NRCS for funding this initiative. And thank you to the Minnesota branch of NRCS for your ongoing support. Our objectives are to welcome all women in agriculture and land stewardship. We are here to increase women's knowledge, understanding, and use of conservation, climate smart practices, and NRCS programs, and hopefully shepherd you through the process of program assistance, and that together we can build a lasting legacy of relationships and regional networks. Our priorities are to equip you with these goals to develop your own conservation plan and support you through whatever process you choose. I want to share with you that this is an example of how we are building a regional network. We have potlucks, webinars, field days, and this is a picture of one of our sharing our stories from the field. It's a learning circle that we hosted in Fergus Falls, and we also hosted one in Red Wing. We also were able to sponsor women with scholarships to attend the SFA Soil Grazing and Soil Health Summit, and this is a picture of the 34 women that were able to join us. And those 34 summit scholarship recipients came from across 24 counties. And I chose one of many, many reflections to share with you. I thought it was really perfect and poignant. I'm so grateful, beyond grateful for this opportunity. The last year, priorities changed, and I feel I lost sight of what fills my soul and my direction for my new farm. I gained knowledge, confidence, and inspiration to find myself on the right track again and look forward to moving forward. This is from one of our scholarship recipients. We will be hosting the April webinar with our team member, Noreen Thomas, who is going to be hosting that, called The Dirt on Agriculture, Organic and Regenerative. And we have some wonderful people lined up for that. We have reached almost 1,500 women since the fall of 2024. And you can see here on the map the strength and the expansion of counties that reflect the participation. We hope that you will join us to deepen and expand our connectivity and to grow our capacity as conservationists. So let's turn this state green together. So if you would put on your calendars, our May 27th webinar will be featuring birds, the impact of insecticides on their health, land management practices that help and support our avian friends. And we will be hearing avian ecologist Nicole Davros and a representative from Audubon Conservation Ranching. And Alex, who's with us today, will be hosting that. So, Maddie, I have a QR code here. I don't know if it will be effective. Will it? Yeah, okay. And that is just to link to our website. But at the end, you will share with everybody at the end a link for a quick feedback online. Is that right?
Yes, yeah. After our presentation and question and answer before we all hop off, we will do a quick little pop-up survey. So yeah.
Thank you. And thank you all for being here.
Yeah, thanks, Burke. So generally we aim to take a screenshot at this time because obviously people have to roll off at different times. And so um, if you feel comfortable coming off of, if you're putting your video on, we'll do a screenshot. And Alex, is that something you're able to actually take the screenshot of? If not, I can definitely do it. That's okay. Um, Okay, I'm getting a thumbs up from Alex. Does that mean it works or no? Here, I'll go ahead and I can do it. Okay, so everyone will give you three, two, one. Beautiful. Oh, and we have a hand raised. We got, yep, wave. We're looking great. We're feeling good. Everyone looks lovely. Okay. Thank you for bearing with us so we can take a picture because it would be great if we could all be in person all the time, but obviously this means we can be together even though we're far away. So, all right. Well, I am going to get us started here with our first speaker. So, kind of also just a little housekeeping thing. How we're going to do it is if you've been on these webinars before, we usually have our speakers kind of share, and then we do question and answer at the end. But as folks are talking, drop those questions in the chat. Noreen and Alex have eyes on those, and so we'll make sure we get those questions to the folks who are speaking today. And make sure that we can get your questions answered. So, yeah, so we'll buckle up. It's good. I think it's gonna be really fun. I'm excited. So I will get our first host, our speaker spotlighted here, Cree. So Cree Bradley works multiple complementary jobs that keep her busy year-round. She's employed by the Minnesota Department of Agriculture in the Plant Protection Division, collecting population and reproduction data on Lamantria dispar, or spongy moth, an invasive species with field work primarily throughout the Superior National Forest and adjacent lands, while supervising a crew throughout northern Minnesota. Since 2016, she has run work song services in order to reach, teach, and support more farmers and ranchers across the country with holistic management education. And Cree can be found in late winter and spring collecting spruce grouse population data for the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources and many other things, but we'll pass it to her and she'll tell you about those things. So, Cree, go ahead and take it away.
All right. I'm just going to tell my husband that he's making too much noise right now. All right. Okay. Thanks for that introduction, Maddie. It's really nice to be invited to this event, and it makes me excited to attend more of these in the future. I guess I kind of knew about them in the background, but I also forgot about them over time, so it's nice to now be connected to it and to see so many people on this webinar. So thank you for attending. My name is Cree Bradley. I operate Chelsea Morning Farm, and I also do business as Never Summer Sugarbush. And just to introduce our farm a little bit, we are pretty diverse in our enterprises. We do maple syrup, tapping anywhere from 2,500 to 3,000 trees. We're collecting sap right now, bringing home 4 big tanks today. So, and probably more collected today. So it's a busy time of year. We have periodic laying hens that we use primarily for soil health, more so than an enterprise that we're looking to market. Those laying hens do a good job for us. Vegetables, that's a core enterprise to our farm. Vegetables and maple syrup are the core things that we do. So we have diversified vegetables, community supported agriculture shares where we have members who are part of our farm and do some wholesale and direct sales as well. We have a big spring transplant sale that has a strong emphasis in heirlooms that I've been trialing and honing since we started this farm in 2006. And I'm pretty brutal with those heirlooms. I kick the ones out pretty quickly who don't perform, and I hone in on the ones that give us the results that we need for a livelihood farm. And that's been really fun because diversity is a really big value of mine, and so it's fun working with those different vegetable species. Commercial fish on Lake Superior, we sell fish through our farm operation, and some holiday wreaths. And so those are our farm enterprises. More recently, in the last few years, we have brought on one more enterprise into the mix, which is climate smart trees. And so that has been a really interesting addition to our farm operation, how it came about, some of the decisions that went into effect when we made the decision to do this enterprise, why we're doing it. So I'm going to talk about those things, as well as just from a grower perspective, what are climate smart trees? I'm going to describe what that is, how we got into the enterprise, what are some of the production challenges, and then just a quick snapshot of some growing. And then I'm going to put on a different hat as a Farm and Forest Growers Cooperative grower member, and talk about the Farm and Forest Growers Cooperative, which sells and markets and educates and supports growers around these climate smart trees. So I will dive into what the co-op is, how does it help growers, and reforestation efforts, and how you can get involved, because there's lots of opportunities for people to join cooperative efforts. So I'm excited to share that part. I'm going to start my presentation with watching a 2+ minute video. It seems like it encapsulates a lot of the reasons why we do this and what climate smart trees are,
I
kind of
put it on speaker.
effectively using this time. So I'm hoping I don't have any issues with clicking onto this video and get it playing. Bear with me. I'm just going to make sure the volume's up. And we're going to hope that you can hear it okay. I come alive when I am in the forest. Those trees out there become almost like old friends. But because of climate change, northern Minnesota is warming up quickly and the forest is dying. It's really hard to see. My name is Cree Bradley. I run Chelsea Morning Farm with my husband, Jason. We love to grow things, plain and true, and we love trees. And so when this forest assisted migration project came about, we were so compelled to get involved in it. The Forest Assisted Migration Project is where farmers grow climate smart trees that we can then plant in northern Minnesota so they'll survive as climate changes around them. The University of Minnesota Duluth distributed the seeds to us. These species, white pine and red oak, are the same species that are growing here, but these seeds have come from an area just south of this region where they're adapted to be growing in slightly warmer temperatures. Trees do an amazing job at sequestering and absorbing carbon, and so it seems very much logical that we would look to nature as part of a solution towards climate change. As part of the project, the Nature Conservancy and other partners will buy 40,000 trees and use them in their restoration efforts. We are small growers, and it takes a lot of capacity to take
Cree, the video's not playing.
Financial risk.
It's just the sound.
And outlet for the trees. That's really exciting. It's such a huge problem we face, climate change, and we need big solutions. There's no question about that. I think if we can all step up our role and do more, we will make a difference. But it's going to take everyone. My hope for these trees is that some of them survive and become really big relics someday, long into the future, long after we're gone. Okay. Was that, could people hear that video? And I heard something in the background, but I didn't quite hear it. I didn't know if I should pause.
Cree, we could hear the video fine, but we couldn't see it. I'm thinking it's because it opened up in a different window than the one you're sharing. But Alex just dropped the video link into the chat. So folks, please feel free to, and we'll send it out after this as well. So feel free to go back and then watch the visuals. But we got to hear what you were saying in the video. Yep.
Oh, that's so bad. I'm going to have to learn how to do that better then. Thank you. Okay. So when we talk about climate smart trees. The video described it a little bit, putting it into some perspective in relationship to climate change, and Minnesota in particular. A statistic from NOAA, on average, 7 counties warmed greater than 2 degrees Celsius or 3.6 degrees Fahrenheit since the late 19th century in Minnesota, and that's about twice the global average. And so Minnesota is known as one of the states in the United States that's considered a hotspot for climate change. And then winters across Minnesota have warmed even faster. Two-thirds of the counties across the state of Minnesota are greater than 2 degrees Celsius or 3.6 degrees Fahrenheit through from December through February. And so northern Minnesota in particular is warming rapidly. And that's exasperating all the issues that the forests already face: disease, pests, droughts, floods, fires, winds. It's just creating a situation where there's a lot of challenges for the forest, particularly in northern Minnesota. And given the fact that Minnesota in as a statewide is a hotspot, that's probably going to extend through the rest of the state as well. So in order to have healthy and resilient forests and woodlands for future generations, the University of Minnesota Duluth has been doing a long-term research study on climate change and resilience and adaptability of trees, and they found that there's benefits in some assistance to our forest. And so that approach to address some of those concerns, one of them is through climate smart tree seedlings. And so it's a two-pronged approach for what climate smart trees do. One is its broad genetic diversity. Seeds are gathered from native trees across central and southern Minnesota. I'm just moving these, your faces here, from multiple populations of each species. So we want a minimum of 10 mother trees per population to really maximize that genetic diversity. We know that when there's more diversity, things are more resilient. And so that's a key part of climate smart tree seedlings. The other part of it is this forest assisted migration, where the seedlings are grown out by our network of growers and then planted about 200 plus miles from those mother populations to the north. And so research has suggested that these southern genetics are performing better and are more resilient in northern Minnesota's due to that significant change in temperature. And so, when we get, just south of Duluth and even closer towards Carlton and Hinckley, it's quite a bit warmer in central Minnesota than it is in northern Minnesota. And so we are now experiencing some of those similar temperatures, and the tree genetics up here are struggling with keeping up with that between the warming temperatures in the air, the warming soil temperatures. We're having some successional tree challenges in terms of those trees dying out and the succession of new trees not coming up afterwards. And so climate forest assisted migration is trying to fill that gap that's probably going to happen naturally through these warming temperatures and climate change, where instead of letting a population of trees die out and then slowly recovering with other species, it's trying to fill in that gap and assist that population and that diversity with a more resilient tree structure, planting both native species that are in abundance here, but also some of these species that are native to northern Minnesota, but maybe not in higher quantities, but are expected to become higher in population over time. Like there are oaks in northern Minnesota, quite a few of them, but they're not super prevalent on the landscape. A lot of people don't think of oaks in northern Minnesota in certain locations. They're out there. It's thought that there's going to be a lot more oaks on our landscape in those future years due to climate change. And so kind of taking that native population and just assisting it along and bringing in that diversity to help those oaks be resilient going into the future. So that's what climate smart trees are. There's a lot behind it, a lot of research that has been done over a long period of time. Dr. Julie Ederson at the University of Minnesota Duluth has spearheaded a lot of that research and has been a great partner that really brought this project into fruition. And so when I think about, doing this as a farmer, as a grower myself, I think for what it came down to in making the decision is reviewing our deeply held values and personal needs. That's what kind of drove this decision to get into climate smart tree seedlings. Some of those deeply held values are on the bottom of the screen: diversity, aesthetic beauty, resourcefulness, deep relationships. And that can be with people and the land, stewardship of the land, financial viability, connection to wildlands, authenticity, seasonal cycles. There's quite a bit within our personal needs and values that relate back to the land for us: land conservation, land health, and stewardship. And as we look at farming and wanting to reflect our values through the decisions we make with farming, this enterprise just really spoke to us. We are very much forest and tree people. My husband and I both are. We work in the forest for our state job. I do spruce grouse research, which is a very boreal forest species. We have a 3,000 tree maple syrup operation enterprise. And I think the enterprises that we do where we are connected to the trees are the ones that are probably the ones that are most deeply rooted in our passions and our enjoyment. So we're definitely forest and tree people. And so there was a connection there just in our love for trees and wanting to engage with trees and make sure that we can be planting them ourselves, having other people plant and be part of a reforestation effort. Another big reason why we got into this enterprise really relates directly to climate change. Um, Farming is a sunlight-loving business. It's uniquely and intrinsically dependent on those natural processes and environmental and ecological factors. And farmers, I think, make up a culture of resiliency to be working with Mother Nature and accepts some of those things that are outside of our sphere of influence. There's a culture of resiliency that I think is at the heart of a lot of farmers. And forward-thinking ones are adopting climate mitigation strategies. But what happens when farmers are pushed too far? And I saw that in 2015 with a 100-year flood that hit northern Minnesota. I did some case management work during that time and just saw farmers really, really struggle with the impact of that and mental health issues and quitting farming because they had been pushed too hard too many times with flooding and weather events that were pushing them beyond the point that they felt like they could continue. And so I think that that's a really big concern that we have to be aware of, that um, there's a big drop when you have a culture of resiliency and they drop off. It's a big recovery effort for those people mentally and emotionally to recover from that. And so repeatedly and with increasing intensity, we have experienced it here at our farm. The heat becomes drought and fire, rains become flooding events, winds are far more extreme now. The 30 and 40-year weather patterns that we have on record, at least in our maple syrup operation, because we took it over through a farm transition process from a mentor, they're dramatically different in these last 10 years than what they were in those previous 30 to 40 years. And so for us, I think we feel it now on an annual basis where we're always contending with just really extremes and volatility in weather that is challenging, and trying to create systems where your farm is keeping up to that. It's a lot. And so growing climate smart trees, I think for us, it's like that little thing that we can do where we feel like we're doing something. There's a lot of this that feels somewhat out of our sphere of influence, out of our control, but we're doing something that relates back to climate change that feels tangible and positive, like we're part of a solution. And it might be that small solution, but it's doing something, and that feels really good. And then just a thing outside of conservation, but just the realities of aging and health and finances. Um, as I approach 50, my health is changing. I've got some neurological conditions that create some challenges related to the physicality of specifically vegetable farming. It's a very physical enterprise, and that has been a tough reality to face with those health changes and growing older, and thinking that, I hope I'm growing vegetables for a long time into our future, but also being realistic about it. I might not be able to do that with my body at the age of 60 or 70. That hopefully that won't be the case, but just kind of facing some realities of health. And so sometimes farming sometimes requires that transition. And with trees, it's still a lot of work, but it's much kinder on your body. And so, since vegetables is a core enterprise, we're looking at trees right now as something that might be able to become a core thing that we do in the future. And so, right now, we're really growing with this enterprise, learning it, really subsidizing it in a way so that we can grow with it now, so that at that time, if we need to make that transition or if we want to make that transition, we're ready to do it and we've got the capacity to do it. And so just kind of thinking ahead a little bit of how this fits into our life long term has been really helpful. I'm just going to show you a quick snapshot of some of the production. It all starts out with seeds. So that's our fridge right now downstairs in our basement. It's filled with acorns. It's filled with a lot of different species of seeds that are much smaller than acorns, so you can't even see those ones in the picture. The acorns take up the most room, those in black walnuts. It starts with those seeds. We go into planting using specialized tree growing containers called cone containers. And the reason why we use these specialized cones is because trees take up a lot of room and a lot of trees don't germinate. And so you can waste a lot of really valuable space in a greenhouse or a high tunnel by a lot of non-germinated trees. So these cones are individual. You can take them out, pop in ones that are growing, and reorganize those containers, which is really, really helpful. It's an expensive investment. Those cone containers aren't cheap, so there is that startup cost if you want to grow them in those cone containers. But as we look at a livelihood farm, we need to be really conscious about use of space and how we're maximizing that space. So the cone containers have been a really good investment. We've got our little growing station. What you're not seeing there is the huge, big tote of dirt that we mix up for our trees. But we have a box so that we can contain the dirt as we're filling up those trays and have some cheat sheets on cardboard. When I look at our life and our seasonal workflow, I consider March through May, a little bit into mid-February, a little bit into mid-June as our chaos period. We are insanely busy this time of year, and it's a little nutty to the point that when we thought about bringing on climate smart trees, we didn't know if we could actually handle that enterprise during this period of the year. And this is a really important period because this is when you're planting tree seeds. And so what makes this chaotic period of our life work is the fact that we absolutely love sugar bush work and the greenhouse work with transplants that extends to trees because we grow them in a greenhouse. So it makes it work, and it's these enterprises are time limited. If that was our schedule for 12 months out of the year, it would be really hard to continue on. So it does work for us. But when we brought on climate smart trees, we really decided that if we're going to do this, we need to be able to have the capacity to hire help, especially for that seeding part of it. Seeding in March through May, a little bit into June is when we need to be able to hire that help to help us get those seeds planted. And so we're able to bring on some planters. John Kerry, he lost a position due to federal funding cuts, and it was really nice to be able to give him some work. And that is really meaningful to me. If I can do that through our farm, that's like one of the greatest rewards that I feel like I have when that I can give back to others. So John has been a tree planter for 3 years, a seed planter for us, and he does a great job. You start to see those trees germinating. They pop up slowly but surely. You got to give them some time. Sometimes we have trees germinating still in August. So when you're pulling out those cones that seem like they're empties, sometimes we set them outside and kind of consider them waste until we need them again. And every so often we find trees later on in the season. Um, Trees start to grow. You get, these really nice, healthy, beautiful trees. The fall starts to come on. And you start to have to do inventory of those trees. We sell our trees through the co-op, and they're done by different measurements and heights, and you have to have a certain girth on that stem. So we have to go through every tree and use that little popsicle stick that's in my hand to measure that tree and separate them by height and by species. We've got to keep our seed lots very, very organized because as climate smart trees, we want to know where that seed source was from, so that if it's a forest-assisted migration planting, we can get that 200 miles north of the mother population. So there's a big chunk of work that we do kind of starting in August, September for the measurements. And then again, that fall comes on, you start to see some color change in those trees. It gets more pronounced over time. Eventually, those trees lose their leaves if they're deciduous trees that lose leaves. And then winter comes, and in on a very, very, very cold couple days that hit -20, we were packing up trees in the greenhouse, which was a really interesting task, trying to stay warm and put some propane heat in there to subsidize what we were able to keep warm with our heat lamps. So it was a cold packing up of trees for the winter storage. So that's kind of a snapshot of production. Some of the challenges of growing tree seedlings. It's a steep learning curve. There's high startup costs, and it's a kind of a long-term return on that investment because of that high startup cost. I don't think it necessarily has to be if you're starting really small and growing, 20 or 100 or even 500 trees. But if you're doing it at any level of scale where you're starting to get into the thousands of trees and you need to be efficient with that space and those containers, that's where it starts to get into that higher startup cost. You also need some infrastructure, to grow these trees. They're very prone to depredation by critters. And so thinking about how you're protecting those trees, having some type of protective greenhouse or high tunnel space, some infrastructure is involved. They're wild seeds. All these seeds are just wild collected seeds. So when you buy seeds from Johnny's of Maine and you see that 97% germination rate, that's great. And seed companies have to meet certain thresholds for germination. But with wild seeds, we get some lots where we don't have a single seed germinate. We get some lots where we have about a 40% germination rate. And we get some lots where we have 70, 80% germination rate. And we work as farmers trying to figure out, is there something we can do to change germination for the better? But a lot of that has to do with the fact that they're wild seeds and there's just great variability with that germination. And that makes it a difficult enterprise to budget out, to depend on financially. It's just trying to get a sense of how these things play out over time. It takes a few years of experience to start to see some patterns, and then even then things can throw you for a loop. So there's a lot of flexibility and adaptability needed if you want to be a tree grower.
Hey,
Figuring
Cree.
out, yep,
We are running close on time. Is there any I'm just gonna pass it to Kira here in a second.
okay.
Is there maybe 30-second wrap up on this slide? I'm sure we could talk about this a whole bunch, but if there's stuff
Yep.
that maybe we can do in the question and answer part, and then I'll pass it over to Kira.
So I've got 3 minutes left, is that correct?
We are over time actually.
Okay.
Yep.
Wow,
Um,
that went
yeah,
fast.
it went fast.
Okay. I would love to talk about the co-op in the question and answer time because there's a lot
Perfect.
to share with the
Okay.
co-op as well.
That's
Yeah.
great. We'll pass it back to you during the question and answer time to share about the co-op Cree, and then, but we'll pass it to Kira now to kind of share her presentation. So I will let me get that set to go here. Do. Sometimes things work and they don't. Okay, so um, I am introducing our next speaker, Kira Pollack. She is a University of Minnesota Extension educator specializing in tree seed collection and seed production. Prior to her role with Extension, she was a natural resource technician in the Twin Cities, conducted research on eastern hemlock restoration in Minnesota. In her free time, you can find her reading romance novels, gardening, and crocheting. Sounds like Kira's got lots of fun activities that I would also participate in. So, Kira, I'll pass it to you, and we look forward to hearing from you.
Excellent. Are you seeing what I hope you're seeing? Fantastic. Um, Thank you, Maddie. So as I mentioned, I'm Kira Pollack, and I'm excited to talk to you about tree seed collection. My job exists because trees are great and we need and want more of them. In Minnesota, we have a need for seedlings that is currently unmet in terms of, the quantity, sure, but also the species that people are interested in and the provenance. So where are these trees coming from? This is a problem for professional and private land managers. So this picture is from 2 falls ago, where Extension and the U4 team, so that's the Urban Forestry Outreach and Research Lab, where we partnered to plant southerly tree species to monitor for adaptability in an urban setting. So one of the species we planted was northern pecan. And I noticed that some were from Iowa, which makes sense. That is the northernmost tip of their range at the moment. But some of them were from Georgia. And a couple of years ago, I sent out a survey looking for eastern hemlock trees because that was my master's research. And someone reported purchasing seedlings from an Etsy shop out of Georgia, and all failed to thrive and died. Sourcing trees from a little further south of a planting site is a climate adaptive practice, but clearly sourcing trees from as far south as Georgia is not ideal. I personally grew up in Athens, Georgia, so I can in fact confirm Minnesota climate a little bit different. But if those are all the trees that you can find, the alternative is not planting anything at all. So depending on someone's management goals and the life history of a species, natural regeneration is 100% viable. But generally speaking, planting trees is faster. It offers more control over who shows up where. The formal term is stand composition. And it allows land managers to play an active role in climate adaptation. So right now, our climate is heating up faster than trees can run. And if we want resilient forests in the future, we've got to start working on it now. So I borrowed this slide from the Nature Conservancy's Minnesota Million Project. In 2020, some of their research showed that there are about 2 million acres of land in Minnesota where restoration of forest cover is theoretically possible after ensuring safeguards for grassland biodiversity and food production. So not taking farms or prairie out of commission, but where else can we plant trees? So that's where they came up with that goal for 1 million acres that we could reforest, which would be an emissions reduction equivalent of 650,000 cars annually. Planting trees is a cost-effective natural climate solution. It's easy to deploy and provides multiple benefits, as I'm sure you all well know. In this map in particular, the darker color means that there are more acres that could be reforested within that county. So currently you can see that there is a high potential in central and southeastern Minnesota, but don't look at this map and if your county is not highlighted, think that there's nothing for you to do. We know that trees can be incorporated into your landscape in multiple ways, including many agroforestry practices. And the trees that you produce have really good genetically valuable seed. And of course, you can grow seedlings with the Farm and Forest Growers Cooperative. So if we are going to plant 1 million acres worth of trees or more, if we're feeling really ambitious, we need a lot of trees. And additionally, these plantings probably should be ready for our changing climate. So thinking about the map on the last slide, if there's a lot of opportunity in central and northern Minnesota to plant, well then probably we should be getting those seeds from a little bit further south. Extension and other organizations use modeling techniques to make hypotheses of future climates and projected ranges of tree species to inform these practices. So very science-based, though you're definitely going to see different opinions depending on who you talk to about what the right distance is. Trees don't run particularly fast, but we can intervene to try and give them a potential advantage. And you might say, Kira, what do you mean by trees run? We know that species naturally migrate. It takes them a really long time, but seeds will fly, bob in the water, hitchhike, or get defecated away from range edges. And if they encounter hospitable conditions, they grow, they seed out, and those trees keep pushing that edge onward until they hit some sort of insurmountable boundary. And as the climate changes, areas that weren't hospitable may become so, but the problem is that additionally, some regions are becoming less suitable for species or whole ecosystem types. If these climate shifts were slow, species could shift slowly as they have for millions of years. But I think we can agree that the Anthropocene is chugging Red Bulls, and while trees are trying to keep pace, they could use some assistance. So I will go pretty quickly over this slide since Cree did an excellent job of describing assisted migration. So We have three primary subcategories, and the one that Farm and Forest Growers Cooperative and the research coming out of the UMD Land Lab with Julie Ederson is this first one, which is assisted population migration. That's bolstering the quantities and genetic diversity of species within that historic range. And again, like planting bur oak seedlings from southern Minnesota or northern Iowa into central and further north in Minnesota. The species themselves aren't moving, but the genes are. And again, we need a lot of trees. And it's not just that we need to expand production capacity or the market, which we do, and luckily some folks are working on that, but we also just plain need more seeds. Anyone who has tried planting anything from seed knows that it's never a 1-to-1 ratio of seeds to any plant, and that is very, very true for trees. Many tree species germination rates are 30% or lower. And while many seeds do kind of fall from the sky, we need people power to wrangle them from parent tree to cooler to nursery in that sometimes really narrow viability window. There aren't many professional seed collectors supplying nurseries, and the group of volunteers that currently supply the DNR is small and shrinking. My job then is to train new collectors, helping to form a statewide network that can meet the demands of growers and land managers across the state. So as I mentioned, people have been collecting seed for the DNR since at least the 1930s. This pool of collectors has dwindled as they age out, and a lot of those skills have not been passed on. Especially we saw this really big cultural push to leave rural areas, go get an education, kid, get a high-paying job. And that's not a bad thing, but it also means that a lot of these smaller, which is not a value statement, skills just have not been passed on generation to generation. They're dying out. It's also very seasonal work, and the yearly variation in yield is less conducive to a lucrative primary job. So it's not, generally speaking, a job that you can do 40 hours a week and be able to pay your mortgage. However, despite the current volatility of funding and natural resources, seed collecting can be a viable side hustle, a seed hustle. And I like to think that the wealth of benefits that we receive from more trees on the landscape makes us all rich. So you do have to know a thing or two about seed in order to collect quality seed. Who are you collecting for? What's your target species? What tools might you need? Do you need a ladder, a tarp, a tennis ball picker-upper? How does the type of seed affect the best practices for processing and storage? So last year I delivered some hybrid courses called ACORNs because I love an acronym, which is Access, Collection, Organization, and Redistribution of Nuts and Seeds. And this used primarily videos to cover identification, seed development, phenology, and tools to collect from 6 species, which were bur, swamp white, and northern red oaks, black walnut, yellow birch, and silver maple. I'm currently working with the DNR to expand the species offered, including more conifers over the next 2 years. And because I love an acronym, we have another one, which I'm calling CACONS, though the E is an ampersand, and that will be Certified Collector of Nuts and Seeds. These will be online, self-paced, and always available, always free, which is a little different than how Acorns was running. And then there'll be an in-person section, which I think I talk about on the next slide. To stay in the loop on when these launch, you can check my Extension webpage periodically or subscribe to the monthly Extension Forestry newsletter. So the first one will be the Z-Link that goes to tree seed, and then My Minnesota Woods is also MMW, that Z-Link. So the point of this course is that I want to make sure that you feel confident, not just knowledgeable. So the DNR will also offer in-person sessions to practice your skills with more seasoned seed collectors. And my understanding is that the Farm and Forest Growers Cooperative is also hoping to host some, but I can only speak for this current partnership because that's the one I've been talking about for a while. In these pictures, participants are learning about different tools. So in the first picture, they are using a cone cutter to see the seeds within a cone to see if it would be worth collecting. In the second one, we're practicing identifying silver maple. And in the third, we're talking about black walnut collection. As this program grows, I'm especially interested in place-based training. So if you know of or manage a site that would be great for seed collecting, we can train folks at that site. This would also reduce the decision fatigue for volunteers because finding where to collect does tend to be the biggest barrier. And seed collection is not the only way you can get involved. A super important part of collecting seed is knowing where and when to find trees with seed. Scouting encompasses that process of finding potential collecting sites and paying attention to the timing of seed development to help inform collectors. The seasonal cycle that trees and other living things go through is called phenology. The cool but sometimes frustrating thing about being in Minnesota, which is such a massive state, is that the parts of the cycle, the phenophases, vary not only species to species, but within this massive range of the state. So we know that southeastern Minnesota greens up sooner than the Northwest does, but also we have the weird heat island. Oh, they put our lights on timers. Um, but we also know that the Twin Cities heat island effect means that we're just weird here. Um, and if there's a drought in part of the state, that will also affect when things happen. So we know that there's some predictability, and we have also noticed that in the past decade or so, our seasons and therefore the rhythms are a little out of sync with what we remember. Spring comes a little earlier, winter sometimes comes a little later, and the weather events within them a lot more unpredictable. With all of this change, how do we know when to start looking for ripe tree seed? Currently, we are relying heavily on this guide, the Seeds of Ontario. I usually just call it the Ontario Seed Guide. That's the second edition. This is the first one. And it's a fabulous book. It's not about Minnesota. Clearly, it's about Ontario. And while they give us some when to expect things to happen, which is here and blurry because you're dark from my shelf, those dates have not changed between the two editions, and the first edition came out over 10 years ago. We need more data, and I personally don't believe in training robots to do the fun stuff. So I'm using Nature's Notebook to track the phenological stages of a couple of trees on campus, and I hope you'll consider it too. This is a cool site that collects observations from people all over the world. I'm a huge fan of participatory science and of paying attention to plants and animals. Adding your observations to Nature's Notebook, and specifically the local phenology program called Minnesota Seed Scouting, can help us develop our very own Minnesota-specific collection guide. This is low effort and hopefully high reward. It just means that you pick a couple individual trees and you keep coming back to them over time. And it can be active or passive, whether you drink coffee outside and see that the oaks are flowering, or you're walking in the woods and get brained by an acorn. If you write it down, it's science, it's data, we can use it. So, this was a pretty quick overview, but I hope I conveyed how much help we need to reach Minnesotans' tree planting goals. Whether the trees are for reforestation, research, boulevard plantings, or everything in between, it all starts at the bottom of the supply chain with seed and seed collectors, and then includes folks out and about finding potential seed trees and collecting a lot of local climate data. It involves land managers intentionally managing stands for seed or hosting collection events. More growers, more distributors, and more people buying and planting trees. So I hope you'll consider where you might fit in. All right, big Q&A time.
Awesome. Thank you, Kira. I am spotlighting Cree as well for questions. And Noreen, I'm going to get you spotlighted because you've been looking at that chat and know what people are interested in. Do you want to kick us off?
Yes, I do. This is a question from Julia.
what can we do to make our own plantings more climate resistant? And how can we learn about planting trees? Cree, you want to kick it off, and then Kara will hear from you too.
Well, I think buying specifically climate smart trees is one way to make your plantings more resilient. There's that increased genetic diversity. So one thing to consider is that even if you live in central and southern Minnesota, you could still buy climate smart trees. It might not meet the forest assisted migration part of it if you're living south of where those mother populations were, but they still have the genetic diversity, which is a really key thing to what we do. We make sure we collect from those 10 mothers and get a really strong emphasis on that genetic diversity. So that's a good way to buy climate smart trees. I don't know if there's other organizations out there that sell climate smart trees. I think right now the Farm and Forest Growers Cooperative is the only organization that focuses specifically on climate smart trees. And so we have an online store at farmforestgrowers.com that you can look at our inventory. We're starting to sell out of our plug stock, but we've got quite a bit of bare root and some plug stock left. And of course, we're all ramping up to be planting our 2026 trees for that 2027 growing season. So there's a lot of information at that website.
Kara, would you like to add anything?
Yeah. University of Minnesota Extension has a great resource, and sorry, Maddie, I did not give you this link. But Climate Ready Woodlands, CRW, is a model-based resource for what trees are expected to do well in the future climate, depending on which part of the state you're in. And so I think there are 11 ecoregions. And then for smaller plantings, for any planting help, reaching out to your local soil and water conservation district. If you have a county-based extension educator, the Urban Forestry Outreach and Research Lab, again, if you're more doing like 1 or 2 offs, all great resources.
And Kara, Wendy Johnson had this. She's really interested in collecting oak acorns on my land to contribute. How does she get connected?
Yeah. One, I am going to give you the slight warning that last year was a mast year for oaks, so you might not have a super good crop for the next year or two. But you've got a couple of options. So both the Farm and Forest Growers Cooperative will take your seed, and the Department of Natural Resources will also buy seed. And it's important to know where you are, and that will determine who will take your seed. Again, Farm and Forest Growers, y'all are collecting from the southern-ish half of the state, and DNR collects from the entire state, but they have specific species needs in each office. And so they have quotas that they are looking for, and that will also determine what they'll take. But you can shoot me an email or Cree.
What about is a course out, the CCONNS course out yet? And how can we find that course, please?
It's not out yet, and I know Maddie put some links in. And Cree, you were going to also say something about oaks.
I was going to say that the co-op is really actively looking to expand our seed collection network. And so we love the training that Kira has available because we want people who are trained and skilled at collecting seeds, are trained at identifying trees, but we're really looking to expand our seed network. And so farmforestgrowers@gmail.com is a great way to email our manager, Stefan, if you're interested in offering your land as a seed collection site, if you're interested in being a scout, if you're interested in collecting seeds yourself. And that would be a great one-on-one conversation to have with Stefan if you're interested in looking at that through the co-op.
Okay. And this question earlier too is, if we have trees already, will some of them adapt in natural situation, or is there anything we can do to help them along?
So just like people, trees don't evolve in their lifetime. It is more getting lucky genetically with babies. But what you can do is love your tree. A lot of the issues that we know are going to plague trees in the future, not enough water at the right time. So by taking care of your trees, that um, we know that that will help that tree live. That is not a forest-wide uh, capacity that we all have. We can't often don't have the funding or time or resources to go out and water all of our trees all the time. But if you are adding trees to your landscape, doing more of that climate adapted planting, and then any future offspring of your current trees and the climate adapted ones have also a better chance in the future.
And there's a plug for the clay, like in our county, it's clay water and soil conservation. Can you tell me about those selection of trees a little bit, or some of the bare roots that are native trees, because they're inexpensive? And also the question of what do I expect I'm going to lose, like 50%, 25% is normal.
All of as far as I know, the Soil and Water Conservation District trees, regardless of county, are coming from the DNR originally. So they are all the same trees. What the SWCDs can do, though, is they have the capacity to break them into smaller bundles. So at the DNR, you have to buy 300 trees minimum, and you have to have 100 of each species. And at SWCDs, it can be, 15, 25, which just makes it a whole lot easier for people with less land and who want more diversity. Bare root is one of the easiest to produce, as Cree was mentioning. The containers are expensive and they can make it harder to pack and ship. And some plugs do have a better survival rate. So I don't have a good number for how many you could expect to lose. Again, it depends. Are you planting a couple in your yard that you can keep a really close eye on, or are you planting them in the back 40? That's all going to depend.
Cree, can you share about what the co-op is kind of offers? Because I feel like I know that that was a question someone else had as well, and we were going to give you some time to loop around to that. And I feel like now we're talking about some of the nuts and bolts of that, so maybe that's a good time for you to slot that in.
Sure. The Growers Cooperative, Farm and Forest Growers Cooperative, is a group of growers that came together to really collectively support each other and support this effort of growing these particular trees, climate smart trees. We share production, materials, resources, have grower meetings. Growing these trees is a steep learning curve. So what we can learn and grow and commiserate with each other is very, very helpful as a growers group. We also, as a growers group, we like in unison, collectively, we can do group purchases of inputs like soil or cone containers where we can reduce our shipping costs, reduce our price by getting things in bulk. We have the ability to write grants to help build up our capacity, which we've had a lot of success with so far. And it's when you look at like soil and water conservation districts, they're starting to buy our trees, which is really, really exciting. And so mostly it's in northern Minnesota right now, but some of their trees are coming from these climate smart species. And we hope to continue to grow those relationships. There's a lot of interest and demand out there from counties and SWCDs and tribal entities. And so one thing that happens with like the Nature Conservancy and these agencies and institutions is they don't want to cut checks to 30 or 50 different growers for trees. They want to cut one check to one place. So the cooperative allows kind of that group marketing effort. We have that online store that collectively sells our trees. So it's just a really supportive way to work as a group of growers to do this and do this effectively. We definitely are in that stage of development. I think of it as like a beginning farm. We incorporated in 2023, and we had these great first years because we were heavily grant funded, and now we're like at that stage where there's a lot of demand for trees. We want to meet farmers where they are. It's that steep learning curve. We need more growers, so that's one thing. If there's people out there with land, who have infrastructure, farm interest. We want more growers. We need more growers to capitalize the co-op and to meet the demand so that we don't lose ourselves in this space. We want more growers. So reach out to the Farm and Forest Cooperative if you're interested in being a grower, if you're interested in being a seed collector, if you're interested in just supporting us as a friend of the forest. We have opportunities for that too.
That sounds great. Do you think there's also, this is another question for Wendy, do you think that some growers, as in farmers or landowners, should buy trees 200 miles south, so that you have this kind of climate resistant to bring it back in? So that almost puts us in South Dakota, so where we're at. But if you can share your ideas on that, please.
Yeah, I don't think it's like quite that simple because just because you buy trees in Iowa or South Dakota doesn't necessarily mean that those trees are coming from that location. They might be sourcing their trees from a big nursery in Canada. So you've got to kind of be careful. And sometimes, like teasing out those details can be really challenging. But I would say yes, like if you can either collect seeds from an area south of you and grow them yourself, or if you can learn some smaller nurseries that might be willing to share like what their seed collection and growing process is, you might be able to find that. And then not to say that you should exclusively be planting trees that are from seeds from 200 miles south of you, but adding that in to diversify your forest, I think is a way to build that
Sounds great. Um, if there was one thing that people do wrong, that is reoccurring thing, could you share that with me? Like if it's they planted in a drought or they planted it not deep enough. Could you share some things that you see a lot of growers kind of goof up?
I could share since I'm not like on like the tree growing side of things like in relationship to other people. I'm not sure I can fully answer that in the perspective of like what other people's mistakes are, but I will give an example. Jason and I, when we bought our land, we had a lot more time than money. We could get trees sourced for fairly inexpensive, and we just wanted to go to town. We would plant, anywhere from 500 to 1,000 trees a year for those first number of years. Like we were really gung ho to diversify that forest and do a lot of forest management work. We got a forest stewardship plan. What we found is that those trees, 20 years ago planted, that are out deep in our woods, they are still alive, but they are like literally 2 feet tall and have been browsed so many times, despite efforts to bud cap, despite some efforts to take care of them. And that the trees that were planted right around our house that we caged because we could, we watered because we could, they are 20, 30 feet tall right now. And we think about trees like not being sources of shade and beauty in our lifespan. But to me, that juvenile tree, like it's so beautiful and it's just right there. So they grow faster than you think in your lifetime, and they give you that enjoyment and that pleasure and those positive things. So I guess I would say is I'm not saying 500, 1,000, 5,000 tree plantings and doing that large scale forest stewardship is a bad thing. If you've got the capacity to do it, then that's wonderful. But what I learned through that process is we would have been better off planting 30 trees a year and caging them and caring for them than planting 500 to 1,000 trees a year and still having these living but very hardy, tough bonsai little trees out in the woods trying to survive still. So I think that's like one of my insights over time. And I think it just depends where you're at in your life and what you can afford and all those things taken into account. It's not that one way is right and wrong. It's that keep that in mind.
Thank you very much. Maddy, you were going to have a poll now. I'll kick it back to you. We've
Yeah.
appreciated everything.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I feel like this is one of those moments where you're like, we could probably talk for like another hour or more. But that's why, as has been said, we're going to send the recording of this video. We'll send the links that our speakers have sent over. So if you're interested in any of those items that they've been talking about, whether volunteering, getting involved in the co-op, supporting the co-op by purchasing, all those types of things, all of that info will be in there. And so that we can make sure that we're all working together to help our trees here in Minnesota. So I'm just going to pop up a quick 3-question poll. It is very simple, and just kind of is for you all to do before we jump out of here. So I just want to thank everybody for coming today. Thank you for your questions and attention. And yeah, I mean, our speakers will be on for just a bit more, but we are kind of wrapping up. So thank you everyone for your time today. And yeah, looking forward to seeing you all again.
Special thanks to our speakers. You guys really rocked it. Now I want to go plant 1,000 trees. I'm sorry, Cree. I got to get out there.
I'm with you, Noreen. Thank you.
Thanks all. If there's any final question for our speaker, you can pop it in here, but otherwise, please feel free to take the poll, and then we'll get all those information, all that resources to you shortly.
Do we have a picture, Maddy?
We do have a picture. We got it before, because otherwise I say it's time to go and everyone is going to the bathroom and away from their computers. So we did it. Great. Well, thanks everybody. Have a great rest of your day. And Kira, best of luck with those lights that go on and off with movement.
Usually I'm much more fidgety, and so this is not a problem.
Well, we appreciate you. Thanks everybody. Have a great rest of your day.